In the grand halls of Windsor Castle, where centuries of royal tradition echo through marble corridors, a simple birthday celebration was about to reveal something extraordinary. What started as Prince George's 11th birthday party would become the moment that showed the world a side of the young prince no one expected to see. The cameras were rolling, capturing what was meant to be another picture-perfect royal occasion. Princess Charlotte stood beside her older brother, while little Prince Louis fidgeted with his formal jacket nearby. But as the birthday candles flickered and the family gathered close, something happened that left even the most seasoned royal watchers speechless. This wasn't just another royal photo opportunity. This was the day Prince George stepped into a role that would surprise his parents, shock the public, and reveal the true character of Britain's future king. What unfolded in those precious moments will be talked about for years to come, showing that sometimes the most powerful revelations come from the most unexpected places. The world thought they knew Prince George, but they were about to discover they had only seen the beginning of his remarkable story. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Adelaide Cottage as Catherine, Princess of Wales, carefully arranged the final details for Prince George's 11th birthday celebration. Everything had to be perfect, not just because it was her eldest son's special day, but because the world would be watching. Royal birthdays were always occasions for public interest, but this year felt different somehow. Prince William had noticed it too during breakfast, the way George seemed more thoughtful than usual, more aware of the weight of expectation that came with his position as second in line to the throne. The young prince had been asking more questions lately about his future role, about what it meant to be a king someday. His parents had tried to balance honesty with age-appropriate explanations, wanting him to understand his destiny without feeling burdened by it. "Mummy, will there be photographers today?" George asked as he helped his younger siblings, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, get ready for the celebration. At 9 years old, Charlotte was fiercely protective of her family's privacy, while 5-year-old Louis remained blissfully unaware of the constant public scrutiny they lived under. Catherine knelt down to straighten George's collar, noticing the mix of excitement and nervousness in his eyes. "There will be some photos, darling, but today is about celebrating you with the people who love you most." She had learned to navigate these moments carefully, preparing her children for public attention while trying to preserve their childhood innocence. The guest list was deliberately small and intimate. King Charles III and Queen Camilla would attend, along with other close family members. Catherine's parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, had driven over early that morning with homemade treats and warm embraces. The celebration would take place in the private gardens of Windsor Castle, away from the public eye, but with enough formal elements to satisfy the royal protocols. As the family made their way to Windsor Castle, George sat quietly in the car, watching the familiar countryside roll past. His father had taught him to notice these moments of calm before public appearances, to center himself, and remember what was truly important. William himself had learned this lesson the hard way, growing up in the intense spotlight that followed his parents everywhere. The transformation from private family home to royal venue always amazed the children. Staff members moved with practiced efficiency, setting up tables with pristine white linens, arranging flowers that had been specially selected from the castle's gardens, and positioning cameras at discreet angles to capture the official moments without being intrusive. Charlotte took her role as big sister seriously, helping Louis understand where to stand and when to smile. She had inherited her mother's natural grace and her father's protective instincts, often serving as a bridge between George's more serious nature and Louis's playful energy. The siblings had developed their own language of looks and gentle touches, a way of supporting each other through the unique challenges of their very public lives. King Charles arrived with his characteristic warmth, immediately putting the children at ease with stories and gentle humor. His relationship with his grandchildren had deepened significantly since becoming king, and he treasured these intimate family moments. Queen Camilla brought handmade gifts, and her easy laugh creating an atmosphere of genuine celebration rather than formal obligation. The birthday cake was a masterpiece created by the castle's pastry chef, decorated with George's favorite football team colors, and topped with 11 carefully placed candles. But, as impressive as the cake was, it was the small details that made the day special. Charlotte's handmade card with wobbly writing declaring George the best brother ever. Lewis's enthusiastic but off-key singing of Happy Birthday, and William's gentle guidance as George made his birthday wish. Catherine watched her eldest son carefully throughout the morning, noticing how he naturally took on a leadership role among his cousins and younger siblings. He helped serve cake to the adults, made sure everyone felt included in conversations, and gracefully accepted the formal birthday wishes from staff members who had known him since birth. These weren't behaviors that had been explicitly taught. They seemed to come from something deeper within him. The official photographer captured beautiful images of the family gathered around the birthday boy, but the most meaningful moments happened between the poses. George's quiet conversation with his grandfather about the responsibility that comes with privilege. His patient explanation to Lewis about why certain traditions mattered. His gentle teasing of Charlotte when she worried about getting frosting on her dress. As lunch was served on the garden terrace, the conversation turned to George's interests and aspirations. He spoke thoughtfully about his love of football, his fascination with aircraft like his father, and his growing understanding of environmental issues, a passion inherited from both his father and grandfather. But there was something else emerging in his personality, a natural inclination towards service and consideration for others that impressed the adults around him. The afternoon brought a surprise that none of them had anticipated. A young member of the castle staff, barely 18 years old and new to her position, accidentally dropped a tray of glasses near the gift table. The crash was spectacular, sending crystal fragments across the stone terrace and causing an immediate hush among the gathered family and staff. What happened next would be talked about for months afterward. While the adults moved to assess the damage and ensure no one was injured, George immediately went to the young woman, who was clearly mortified and fighting back tears. Instead of the typical royal response of allowing staff to handle the situation, he knelt beside her and began carefully picking up the larger pieces of broken glass. "It's perfectly all right," he said quietly, his voice carrying a maturity that surprised everyone within earshot. "These things happen. Let me help you." His calm response not only comforted the distressed staff member, but also set the tone for everyone else's reaction. Charlotte and Lewis immediately joined their brother, turning the cleanup into a family effort rather than an embarrassment. William and Catherine exchanged glances across the terrace, recognizing something profound in their son's instinctive response. This wasn't learned behavior from royal training. This was character revealing itself in an unguarded moment. King Charles, who had witnessed decades of royal interactions, later remarked that he had rarely seen such natural grace and empathy from someone so young. The broken crystal became a teaching moment rather than a disaster. George asked thoughtful questions about how accidents happen and how people can help each other through difficult moments. His genuine concern for the staff members' feelings, his practical approach to problem solving, and his ability to turn a potentially awkward situation into a moment of human connection revealed aspects of his personality that formal occasions rarely allowed to surface. As the family gathered for the final official photographs of the day, there was a different energy among them. The morning had been lovely, filled with tradition and celebration, but the afternoon had revealed something more significant. They had seen George not just as a prince celebrating his birthday, but as a young person beginning to understand and embrace his role in serving others. The day was far from over, and none of them could have predicted what the evening would bring. As they prepared for the second part of the celebration, a more relaxed family dinner, George's actions had already set in motion a series of events that would reshape how the public viewed the young prince and his future role in the monarchy. The evening celebration was intended to be completely private, just the immediate family enjoying a relaxed dinner in the Oak Room at Windsor Castle. Catherine had specifically requested No formal photography for this portion of the day, wanted to give the children space to simply be themselves. However, the events of the afternoon had already begun to ripple outward in ways none of them anticipated. Sarah Chun, the young staff member who had dropped the crystal glasses, had been working at Windsor Castle for only 6 weeks. Originally from a small town outside Manchester, she had taken the position as part of a program designed to give young people from diverse backgrounds opportunities to learn about hospitality and service in a royal household. The job was meant to be temporary, a stepping stone to other opportunities, but the experience that afternoon had left her profoundly moved. During her break, Sarah had called her grandmother, who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12. Through tears, she described not just the accident with the glasses, but Prince George's immediate and genuine response. "Nan, he didn't have to help me," she explained. "He could have just walked away like anyone else might have done. But he saw I was upset, and he cared enough to do something about it." Unknown to the royal family, Sarah's grandmother had been a lifelong supporter of the monarchy, but had recently become skeptical about whether the younger generation of royals truly understood the struggles of ordinary people. She had followed news coverage of Prince George with interest, but worried that he was being raised too far removed from real-world experiences. Her granddaughter's phone call changed her perspective entirely. Back in the Oak Room, the family was discovering new dimensions of George's character as the evening unfolded. Free from the formal constraints of the afternoon celebration, conversations became more natural and revealing. Prince Louis, still energetic despite the long day, was showing off magic tricks he had learned from a book, while Charlotte regaled everyone with detailed accounts of her recent writing lessons. George, however, seemed preoccupied. He kept returning to the afternoon incident, asking his parents thoughtful questions about the staff member and whether she was truly okay. "Do you think she feels bad about her job now?" he wondered aloud. "What if she thinks we're upset with her?" William recognized the genuine concern in his son's voice and took a moment to explain how royal households operate, emphasizing that mistakes are part of learning and that good employers understand this. But George's questions went deeper than simple worry about someone's employment. He seemed genuinely affected by the idea that another person might be suffering because of something that happened during a celebration. "Could we do something to help her feel better?" George asked. Not because of the glasses, those don't matter, but because she seemed really sad. His question prompted a family discussion about kindness, responsibility, and the various ways people can support each other through difficult moments. Catherine suggested that a simple note of encouragement might mean a lot to Sarah, and George immediately asked for paper and pen. But instead of dictating a message for an adult to write, he insisted on crafting it himself. His letter was heartfelt and remarkably mature for an 11-year-old, expressing genuine appreciation for Sarah's hard work and emphasizing that everyone makes mistakes and that's perfectly normal. The letter writing session revealed another aspect of George's developing personality. Charlotte and Louis wanted to help, and George patiently incorporated their suggestions while maintaining the focus on making Sarah feel valued and supported. He illustrated the note with small drawings, a castle, a smiling face, and a football, explaining that these were some of his favorite things, and he wanted to share them with someone who had helped make his birthday special. As the children worked on their collaborative note, King Charles shared stories from his own childhood about learning to navigate the balance between royal protocol and genuine human connection. He spoke about his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, and her ability to make everyone feel valued regardless of their position or background. These weren't formal lessons about royal duty. They were family stories that helped George understand the heritage of service and care that he was inheriting. The dinner conversation was interrupted by a gentle knock on the door. James Morrison, the deputy private secretary, entered with an apologetic expression. "I'm terribly sorry to disturb your family evening, Your Majesties, but there's been a development that you should be aware of." The adults exchanged concerned glances, immediately thinking of security issues or protocol breaches. But James's news was entirely unexpected. Sarah's grandmother, Mrs. Lily Chun, had contacted the castle's main switchboard with a request to speak to someone about her granddaughter's experience that afternoon. She wasn't calling to complain, James explained carefully. Quite the opposite, actually. She wanted to express her gratitude for how Prince George handled the situation. According to her granddaughter, His Royal Highness showed remarkable kindness and maturity. Mrs. Chun felt it was important that the family know how much this meant to them. The room fell silent as the implications of this unexpected call sank in. Royal households were accustomed to receiving complaints, formal protocols, and carefully managed communications, but spontaneous expressions of gratitude from staff families were quite rare. More significantly, the call meant that George's actions had resonated far beyond the castle walls. George looked puzzled by the adult's reaction. To him, helping someone who was upset had been the obvious thing to do, not something particularly noteworthy or praiseworthy. His confusion highlighted the natural instinct behind his actions, making them even more meaningful to the adults who understood the broader context. William and Catherine realized that this moment represented something they had hoped for, but couldn't have orchestrated. Genuine evidence that their son was developing the character traits that would serve him well as a future king. Not the formal courtesies that could be taught, but the authentic empathy and care for others that had to come from within. The evening took on new significance as the family discussed what this unexpected feedback meant. King Charles, drawing on decades of experience, explained how rare it was for royal actions to generate such genuine, unsolicited positive responses from the people they encountered. Most interactions were cordial and professional, but this had clearly touched something deeper. Charlotte, ever observant, noticed that her brother seemed uncomfortable with the attention his actions were receiving. "George doesn't like it when people make a big fuss," she announced matter-of-factly. "He just likes helping people." Her innocent observation captured something important about George's character. His actions had been motivated by genuine care rather than any desire for recognition or approval. As the evening wound down, the children worked together to finish their note to Sarah. What had started as George's individual gesture had become a family project, with each sibling contributing something special. Charlotte added a carefully drawn flower, Louis contributed his signature smiley face, and George wrote a final line inviting Sarah to have a lovely rest of the day and know that everyone here thinks you're doing a great job. The letter delivery was planned for the following morning, but the impact of the evening's conversations would last much longer. William and Catherine found themselves reflecting on their parenting approach, recognizing that their efforts to raise their children with values of service and empathy were bearing fruit in ways they hadn't fully appreciated. Before the family retired for the night, George made one final request that surprised everyone. He wanted to know more about Sarah's background and circumstances, not out of curiosity about her personal life, but because he was genuinely interested in understanding the experiences of the people who work to make royal events possible. This request prompted a broader conversation about the castle staff, their backgrounds, their families, and their contributions to royal life. George listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and making connections between the individual stories and the larger picture of how many people work together to support royal duties and events. The day that had begun as a traditional royal birthday celebration had evolved into something much more significant. As the family said their goodbyes and the children prepared for bed, there was a shared sense that they had witnessed something special, not just a birthday party, but the emergence of a young person who truly understood what it meant to serve others. The final surprise of the evening came as George was getting ready for bed. Louis, exhausted from the long day, but still energetic enough for one last conversation, asked his older brother why he had helped clean up the broken glasses when there were adults whose job it was to handle such situations. George's answer was simple and profound. Because she needed help, and I could help her. That's what people do for each other. His matter-of-fact response revealed that for him. The choice had been obvious rather than calculated. This wasn't a learned royal protocol. It was simply his natural response to seeing someone in distress. As the family settled into their evening routines, none of them could have predicted how this simple birthday celebration would continue to unfold and impact their lives in the days to come. The morning after George's birthday brought unexpected developments that would reshape how the royal family approached public engagement and how the public viewed the young prince. What had begun as a private family celebration was about to become a defining moment in George's early public life, though not in any way that royal protocol officers could have anticipated or planned. Sarah Chun arrived at work early that morning, still processing the emotional events of the previous day. She had spent much of the night on the phone with family members, sharing the story of Prince George's kindness and trying to explain how profoundly the experience had affected her. Her colleagues noticed the difference in her demeanor immediately. Where there had been nervous uncertainty about her new position, there was now a quiet confidence and genuine enthusiasm for her role. The delivery of the family's collaborative letter was handled with the same care that attended all royal communications, but the content was entirely personal and heartfelt. When Sarah opened the envelope during her morning break, she was moved to tears not just by the words, but by the obvious effort each child had put into making her feel valued and appreciated. The letter's impact extended far beyond its intended recipient. Sarah's supervisor, Mrs. Elizabeth Hartwell, had worked in royal households for over 20 years and had never seen a staff member receive such a personal and thoughtful communication from the royal family. The gesture was particularly meaningful because it had been initiated entirely by the children themselves, without prompting from parents or protocol officers. Meanwhile, in Adelaide Cottage, the Wales family was beginning to understand the broader implications of George's actions. Catherine received a call from the castle's private secretary's office informing her that Mrs. Lily Chun had requested permission to write a formal letter of thanks to Prince George. This was highly unusual. While expressions of gratitude were common through official channels, personal communications from the families of staff members were rare and required careful consideration. The request prompted important discussions about privacy, protocol, and the balance between protecting the children's personal lives and allowing genuine human connections to flourish. William and Catherine had always been committed to raising their children with normal values despite their extraordinary circumstances, but situations like this tested the boundaries of what normal could mean for future monarchs. George himself was largely unaware of the growing attention surrounding his actions. He woke up interested in planning a football match with his siblings and wondering whether Sarah had received their letter yet. His parents chose to let him maintain this natural focus on immediate concerns while they navigated the more complex implications behind the scenes. The morning scheduled activities included a private visit to the castle stables, where George could pursue his growing interest in horses away from public attention. However, their plans were interrupted by an unexpected development that would change the trajectory of the entire week. Mrs. Chun had done more than simply call the castle. She had written a detailed account of her granddaughter's experience and shared it with her local newspaper editor, a longtime friend who had been looking for positive stories about young people and community connections. The editor, recognizing the significance of the story, had contacted the royal press office to verify details and request permission to publish. This created a delicate situation for the royal communications team. The story was entirely positive and reflected well on Prince George, but it also involved a staff member's personal experience and touched on private family moments that weren't typically shared with the media. The decision about how to handle the situation ultimately rested with William and Catherine, who found themselves weighing the benefits of positive publicity against their commitment to protecting their children's privacy. The conversation with George about the media interest was handled carefully. His parents explained that sometimes when people are touched by acts of kindness, they want to share those stories with others. They emphasized that he hadn't done anything wrong, but that his actions had meant so much to Sarah and her family that they wanted other people to know about it. George's response surprised the adults once again. Rather than being excited about potential media attention or worried about privacy concerns, he was primarily interested in making sure that Sarah wouldn't be uncomfortable with any publicity. "Will she get in trouble for talking about work?" he asked. "I don't want her to feel bad because she wanted to say thank you." This mature concern for Sarah's well-being prompted a three-way conversation between the Royal Press Office, the castle's Human Resources Department, and Sarah herself. She was given complete control over whether and how her story would be shared, with multiple opportunities to decline or limit any public discussion. Sarah's decision to allow her story to be shared was motivated partly by her grandmother's encouragement and partly by her own desire to show a different side of royal life than what typically appeared in the media. People always read about protocols and ceremonies, she explained to the press officer. But Prince George was just being kind, like any good person would be. Maybe that's worth sharing. The story, when it appeared in the local Manchester newspaper, was written with sensitivity and focus on the positive aspects of intergenerational kindness and service. The headline read, "Young Prince's Birthday, Kindness Touches Local Family." And the article emphasized both George's natural empathy and the positive working environment at Windsor Castle. The response to the article exceeded everyone's expectations. Readers wrote letters to the newspaper expressing appreciation for a positive royal story that focused on character rather than controversy. Several local community leaders reached out to discuss ways to encourage similar acts of kindness among young people in their areas. More significantly, the story was picked up by national media outlets, but with a different tone than typical royal coverage. Rather than focusing on protocol, fashion, or palace intrigue, journalists found themselves writing about character development, family values, and the importance of teaching children to care for others regardless of their social position. Back at Windsor Castle, the family was navigating this unexpected media attention while trying to maintain normal routines for the children. Charlotte and Louis were fascinated by the idea that their brother's kindness had become news, though they couldn't fully understand why helping someone was considered remarkable enough for newspapers. George remained thoughtfully focused on the human elements of the situation rather than the publicity aspects. He asked his parents whether they could visit Sarah's grandmother, Mrs. Chun, to thank her personally for raising someone so hard-working and kind. This suggestion prompted discussions about appropriate ways to acknowledge the connection while respecting everyone's privacy and maintaining proper boundaries. The visit to Mrs. Chun was ultimately arranged as a private meeting at a neutral location, a community center in Manchester where both families could interact comfortably. The meeting was kept strictly confidential, with no media presence, allowing for genuine conversation between George and the elderly woman who had been so moved by his actions. Mrs. Chun, despite her initial nervousness about meeting royalty, found herself completely charmed by George's natural curiosity and genuine interest in her family's story. He asked thoughtful questions about her experiences raising Sarah, her memories of previous royal events, and her perspectives on community service and helping others. The conversation revealed another dimension of George's developing character, his ability to connect with people across generational and social divides. Mrs. Chin later described him as an old soul in a young person's body, someone who listened carefully and responded thoughtfully rather than simply being polite. During their visit, George learned that Mrs. Chun had been volunteering at local food banks and community centers for over 30 years, despite facing her own financial challenges as a pensioner. Her commitment to helping others, regardless of her personal circumstances, made a deep impression on the young prince and sparked new conversations about different ways to serve one's community. The ripple effects of George's birthday kindness continued to expand in unexpected directions. Sarah's confidence in her position at Windsor Castle grew significantly, and she began contributing ideas for improving staff training and visitor experiences. Her suggestions were taken seriously by management, leading to several positive changes in castle operations. More importantly, the incident had demonstrated something crucial about George's character development. Under pressure, When faced with an unexpected situation, his instincts had led him toward kindness, service, and genuine care for another person's well-being. These weren't responses that could be taught through formal training. They reflected values that had been absorbed and internalized through years of consistent family modeling and guidance. The experience also provided valuable lessons for William and Catherine about balancing their children's private development with their future public roles. They recognized that moments like these, unguarded, authentic, and genuinely meaningful, offered the best foundation for George's eventual transition to more formal royal duties. As the week drew to a close, the family reflected on how a simple birthday celebration had evolved into something much more significant. George's natural response to seeing someone in distress had not only comforted Sarah, but had also demonstrated to his family, the castle staff, and eventually the broader public that the future king was developing the character traits that would serve him well in his eventual role. The final surprise came in the form of thank you letters from children at Sarah's former school, who had heard the story and been inspired to look for ways to help others in their own communities. Their letters, full of spelling mistakes and enthusiastic drawings, reminded George that kindness is contagious and that even small actions can inspire others to act with greater compassion. George's 11th birthday had begun as a traditional royal celebration, but had become something much more meaningful, a demonstration that the values William and Catherine had worked so hard to instill in their children were taking root in authentic and promising ways. The young prince who would someday be king had shown that he understood, even at 11 years old, that true leadership begins with caring about the well-being of others. The story would be remembered not just as a positive media moment or a successful public relations event, but as the day when Prince George's character revealed itself in a way that gave everyone, his family, the public, and the institutions he would someday lead, genuine reason for optimism about the future of the monarchy.